Hey y'all, I'm Shauna. Welcome in or welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about 9 guidelines. I call them rules, but they're not as rigid as rules, more like guidelines that help me shop more consciously. These have largely emerged over the last 4 years as results of lessons. Like something has happened, or I've had some kind of experience, nothing really that serious, but I've had some kind of lesson and my takeaway has been a guideline. So you could also frame this as like 9 lessons that I've learned and like what has been the result of them, which is, I think, kind of practical. So these are just what work for me that have helped me shop more intentionally or consciously. And this is, I think, for you as a viewer, much more of a take what works, leave what doesn't, because I could really see some of these being absolutely useless or not applicable to like different people's preferences or stages of life or how you acquire goods or things like that. So this is not meant to be like a stringent rule and you must always or you should even abide by these rules. I'm just sharing my own because sometimes when you hear somebody speak about their own experience, you could, have things resonate, but also there could be things where you go, you know what, I don't really think that's for me, and it could help you develop something that is useful to you. So we're just going to get started. And number 1 is to not buy multiples at one time, most especially if it's a first purchase. For me, this is usually tops. It hasn't usually been pants or bottoms. And it's usually been buying multiple of something in different colors. That tends to be how it goes. And this is especially true if I've never tried the brand. Like I don't have any track record of their sizing or liking anything from them. I really avoid doing that if I can. And when it comes to new brands as well, I also avoid buying something in this exact same or very similar silhouette, even if it's not the like totally the same product. Having this specific rule as a guideline has helped me know what might be the exception to the rule, but previously I would assume that like everything would be the exception. However, what has served me best is assuming that every item or every potential purchase is the rule instead of the exception. The main reason why I developed this rule is because of duplicates. I used to buy things much more frequently in duplicates, buying 2 or 3 things at once, or even like buying 2 things and then maybe a month later buying a third of that thing. And 1 month can give you some basic data about how you use an item if you like it, but it also doesn't give long-term results. And I guess like in some cases you couldn't go back and buy that thing a year later, which is also an indicator that like what I'm buying is like fashion is a trend. And when I bought things in multiples, usually one of 2 things happened. I would feel like I was repeatedly wearing the same thing and that just didn't feel right, or I would get bored. I still can buy things in duplicates to this day. It does happen on occasion, but I'm doing it far less than I was 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Or I would realize I didn't like something about an item, but then I would have 2, 3, or 4 of it. And then I wouldn't like all of those things. And then I wouldn't wear them that often, or I would declutter them. Sometimes I just assume something might be right for my lifestyle. And then that just wasn't the case. And I only had 1 thing, so it wouldn't be that much of a problem, or I wouldn't actually need to declutter anything because like I have 1 and I could wear that on occasion instead of having 4 and then 3 things sit in my closet never getting worn. I will allow myself to buy duplicates, but only after some time has gone by. I typically want experience with an item before buying more to know if I actually use it, if I actually like it, if it serves my life in some way. And it's kind of like a data collecting mechanism to then be like, okay, buying a second or third of this thing would actually make sense. In my own experience, this has saved me more than I feel like it's hindered me. Like, I feel like this has prevented me from buying things that ultimately wouldn't have worked out or wouldn't have been a good purchase, or, there just would have been something better. And I've had far fewer examples where I've said, oh, I wish I bought the 2 or the 3. And in cases where I have broken my own rule, I have regretted it more of the time than I've been like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. This rule is so practical because it either prevents me from buying something that wouldn't have worked out or wouldn't have been a good purchase, or if I do decide to make a purchase and buy more, then I'm buying that thing with greater confidence. A recent example of this happened just a few months ago when I was buying a workout t-shirt. I got a shirt and I really liked it and I tried it on in store. And I wanted to, at the time, buy multiples. And I tried it on and I went, oh wow, this is so good. I'd like a couple more workout tops, t-shirts. I couldn't find any of the other colors in my size. So I went home and I was like, you know what? I'm perfectly happy with mine. I could go back at a later time and, buy something else. What ended up happening is that after actually using it and washing it and living my life with it, I realized it was just ever so slightly too cropped. Not cropped enough where I'm uncomfortable, but I would prefer a little bit more. And then the sleeves were a little bit long. I initially felt like it was a 10 out of 10, like my perfect workout top. But after getting it home and wearing it literally twice, I realized it was more like a 7.5 out of 10, and was glad I didn't buy more. What I realized is when I'm buying things, when I'm in the act of shopping, I can't always foresee how this thing might work and operate in real life because I don't have the practical experience yet. I don't know that it's going to be too short. I don't know how it's going to work out in reality because I haven't worn it or matched it with the things that I already have. I also can look at a new purchase with excitement and idealism that even if I am thinking critically or attempting to, some of that could be hidden behind that excitement. So doing things this way is just a little bit more practical. Next up, number 2 is never buy anything when you are emotional. Emotional shopping was one of my worst shopping behaviors. It took a long time to get a hold of, and I still participate in a semblance of that on occasion to this day. I talked about in a recent video still finding myself on occasion adding stuff to my cart, realizing I've done that, and then kind of, checking out, or not checking out, like Xing out of the screen. And so making it a rule to you are not allowed to make a purchase, period, while you are in an emotionally vulnerable state has really in some ways allowed me to take the fun out of my own shopping, because even if I was looking at stuff and found stuff that I like, I can't buy it. I won't buy it. So it's why even look? Or at least that's the rational part of my brain talking to myself when I'm in less of a rational state. I don't buy things in emotional circumstances because it's not about the thing. It's about the act of dealing with stress or an attempt to cope with emotions in an unhealthy way. So if I catch myself doing it, I just exit out of the screen, go find something else to do. Now it does kind of function more like a controlled distraction now, but I still just don't want to participate in that behavior and kind of even remotely going down a slippery slope. So if I catch myself doing that now, I'll go do a controlled distraction elsewhere, usually reading, sometimes watching YouTube videos or comedy shows, something more lighthearted, and then, deal with whatever it is I need to deal with later. I won't buy things in a heightened emotional state because it is not about the stuff. It is about the act of shopping and the relieving of the stress, or the attempt of relieving of the stress, or attempt to disguise or hide or deal with emotions that isn't actually dealing with them. I also just don't consider window shopping or browsing to be a healthy controlled distraction for me either. So I don't participate in it just in any way. Number 3 are little treats. Little treats for me are anything under $10. I do indulge in a little treat every now and then. And so if it's $10 or less, I've given myself permission to not think about it. Now, this would never have worked for me 4 or 5 years ago because I was outside of my home far more often, and that $10 kind of budget would be used every time I went out of the house, which could be something like $30 to $50 a week. I go out of my house in a capacity with my wallet in which I could actually buy things like once a month, twice a month. So there aren't really that many opportunities for me to buy the little treat or like accidentally spend money I didn't have, or maybe more like thoughtlessly spend money that I don't have. So just because of the way I operate now, this like freedom to be like, you can go ahead and spend the $10 is something that like allows me to spend money or even give myself a little pick me up without being financially burdened, but also without having to like navel gaze and over scrutinize small purchases. I have had the tendency in the past to scrutinize even the smallest of like little purchases, like $5 purchases, and it's really not worth losing sleep over, most especially because I don't shop the way I used to shop. So it's like, yes, if it's $10 or less, I am allowed, I've given myself permission to buy the thing and just let it go and not lose sleep over. I've given myself the $10 limit because it's really mostly meant to apply to like food and drinks, not clothes or makeup or skincare, because technically skincare and makeup are consumables because you finish them. And I guess I'm more likely to finish skincare more than makeup, but it's pretty hard to find something at the Canadian drugstore anyways that is under $10 with tax. That also would mean that I would have to like be like looking for something in order to spend the money, instead of being like, oh, I would like to stop by the coffee shop on my way to work, or sorry, on my way to do this thing, or I want to go pick up a cookie today because I freaking feel like it. God damn it. Like more like whims, if you will. And so by having the $10 rule, it just kind of keeps things in check while also letting me indulge in a treat every so often and, not causing financial strain or like mental anguish. Number 4 is what I call the 2 reason rule. And this is for when things are on sale. So have you ever had a moment where you saw something and you're like, maybe you're going through a sales rack? I think this is the more likely scenario. And then you see something that you like and you go, oh my God, it's on sale. I want to buy it. That's happened to me quite a bit. And the 2 reason rule is basically a way to prevent buying something just because it's on sale. I need at least 2 reasons to make a purchase. If the only thing that crossed my mind was, oh my God, it's on sale, that's not 2 reasons. I'm buying it because it's on sale. And sometimes when I'm tempted by the sale, my most logical brain, she's not there. So if I say, all right, you need 2 reasons to buy this thing, we only have 1, no ma'am. Now, this isn't the most rigorous rule for buying something on sale. Like there are certainly more helpful rules or more helpful ideas to think about, but this has been something that has allowed me to catch myself when I'm like, ooh, I want it, it's on sale. I don't use it a ton anymore, but I still kind of keep it in my back pocket. I did find myself actually a couple weeks ago. No, it was sooner than that. There was a Labor Day sale at Sephora and I was looking at the sales section and I found something and I was like, oh, it's a great price. And I added it to my cart and I was like, wait a second. And I immediately thought of the 2 reason rule and I was like, no, ma'am, I added that to my cart because it was on sale. I went looking for things to want and to buy. And I, had a little chuckle and then I, took it out of my cart and left. And, it can just be a reminder of, at least to me, to be thoughtful and usually more of like a gateway to thinking about other things. This leads me into another, what I think is like a very similar rule, but that is the 100 uses guideline. The previous rule was meant to help with thoughtless purchasing or impulse buying, right? You can't buy something if it's on sale. Like being on sale doesn't inherently mean you shouldn't buy it, but buying something impulsively simply because it's on sale is not going to fly in this house. The 100 uses rule is meant to be applied in more critical circumstances or more everyday circumstances to help me think about what I'm buying. And so this one usually applies to fashion items and makeup items, skincare items, but it tends to work best with something that I don't view as a consumable or have a less consumable view. So, as an example, I go through eyeliner and mascara pretty quickly, but I go through eyeshadow much less quickly. So, although eyeshadow or blush are technically consumables, those things take me years to finish. So, thinking about the 100 uses rule for things like that, along with clothing, allows me to just think about, do I actually want to own this for as long it could take to finish this up, or as long as it takes to hit 100 uses? And with clothing in specific, I know I kind of talked about this one maybe the most out of all the rules on here before. It's really just been a staple and has changed my relationship to clothing for the better, because I'm able to be more honest, or I guess as time has gone by, I've been able to be more honest to be like, yeah, it's going to take me 10 years to reach 100 uses with this. I don't think that I could own this for 10 years, let alone would want to own it for 10 years. And the 100 uses is also a bit flexible because there are things that I don't actually intend to wear 100 times, like some more formal dresses or kind of nicer dresses or nicer shoes. I've kind of scaled it back. Like, could I use this 30 times or 50 times with those like maybe more specific items? But most things in my life, I try to kind of, or I guess as many things as possible, try to run through the 100 uses. Even if that thing never reaches 100 uses, maybe it gets 50, maybe it gets 200, it gets more. I think it's a useful lens to think through. And it was one of the first mechanisms that I began to use as a way to think about long-term stuff ownership and trying to build that into purchases. Number 6 is, if I can't afford to buy it twice, I can't afford to buy it at all. I've heard this elsewhere, and it was through hearing about it online that I went, you know what? This is really something that I think is a great rule for me to apply to consumables, mostly things like skincare and hair care. Really, it's really anything that you buy on a regular basis, which could include things like coffee and tea, maybe pop, if you're trying a new, pop brand, anything that you would regularly use up and repurchase. This was brought to my attention during my no-buy year because I had a bunch of Sephora skincare. I owned even some Drunk Elephant, just some stuff that was really expensive that I honestly couldn't really afford it at the time, but was buying it because this was, what I thought that I should buy, or that I was getting more premium skincare because, it was more expensive. I could not afford to regularly purchase $100 serums or like $50 or $60 cleansers. I go through facial moisturizers about 3 to 4 months. I go through cleansers 2 to 6 months, depending on the size of the bottle. So if my moisturizer is something like $80, to buy that every 3 to 4 months is just a lot, even to me now. To me, it's kind of like thinking about long-term usage before you even buy the thing. Like, it prevents me from buying things that I genuinely can't afford, or spending money on that kind of thing just doesn't sit well with you. It kind of helps you think about that, and also, prevents you from falling in love with something that you can't afford. This leads me very nicely into the next one, which is trying the cheapest option first and then working up incrementally in price. So again, this is for things that you would consume regularly: skincare, hair care, things like that. Again, even coffee and tea and some other food items. This one came directly from a subscriber comment, and I'm so thankful that they introduced me to this concept because, again, I guess harkening back to my previous point about the expensive skincare, I was buying expensive skincare because I thought I was getting a better experience. And this is not always the case with something being more expensive. So trying the cheapest option first, or maybe if it's not like the cheapest option, like maybe trying a couple, let's say, drugstore shampoos before assuming that they don't work or they aren't good, and then, going to high-end stuff, or try a shampoo or whatever it is. And I've just found this philosophy so helpful because it has allowed me to not only put in like a testing mechanism, or I guess more like a protocol, if you will, for finding new staple products. It kind of gives me comfort that I have like a strategy or protocol in place if something doesn't work out, that I can, revert back to this. But it also gives me something useful to figure things out, because I feel like so many people or so many of us have been there where maybe a product doesn't work like it used to, or maybe your budget has changed, or maybe your product is no longer available. One of my favorite press powders, it stopped being sold, and I was kind of became a bit disillusioned with it, or more like my preferences has changed around that time. And so I'm like, all right, I need a new pressed powder. So I started at the drugstore and literally found like one of the cheapest options, and then tried a bunch over about 2 years and finally found one that I really, really like. I am the kind of person that like doesn't really want to spend more money if I don't need to on a lot of things, to be honest. And if I am going to spend more money, I want it to be something that works. So I just like this as a concept and as a practice, and has really, it hasn't led me astray yet, because when some things haven't worked, I have just gone up the ladder in price, and some things have led me to more expensive options. Very recently, like this year, I was getting frustrated with my Glossier Boy Brow, and previously I had assumed like that was it, or like maybe the drugstore just can't touch it. And I had some of that because I had tried a couple brow products in the past. I think something like maybe 3 or 4. And none of them have been good. None of them have been mediocre either. They've all just been terrible. So I said, you know what? Let me follow my own protocol. First thing I picked was awesome. And I kind of feel like this is almost like a no-fail method to me, because even if the cheapest options don't work, you can still go buy more expensive stuff if that's in your budget. Next up is that high maintenance items must be a must love. High maintenance items, I am talking about things that are dry clean only or hand wash only. A couple years ago, started buying the wool sweaters, or like mohair sweaters, alpaca sweaters, the kind of real fibered organic fibers, natural fibers is what I'm looking for. Natural fiber sweaters. These things are usually more expensive. Even at fast fashion stores, they're usually on the higher end, more premium pricing. And so you kind of tend to own less, and the pricing is, one thing that typically makes me think a little bit more critically. But after buying a bunch of these sweaters, not really realizing how much maintenance went into them, I went, oh my God, this was not worth it. This is not worth it. I am not the kind of person who's going to put in all this freaking maintenance for this sweater. I had to wear something underneath it so I could wash the sweaters less. And then I would also be cognizant of the weather and the place in which I'm going. So if I'm going somewhere that's like really pungent, has like very strong scents, and I learned that by wearing a dry clean only sweater, it frustrates me to have so many hand wash only sweaters. And when I bought a bunch, I just did not realize that all of them were hand wash only. And then last year, I accidentally put one in the washing machine and shrunk her to just to high heavens. And here is the thing. Hand wash only sweaters disincentivizes me from wearing them, because I don't want to have to put in the effort and the time to hand wash only. And if you wash them the wrong way, because you could hand wash only something in the wrong way and you could still get it to shrink. I just kind of feel like it's sometimes just a bit of a game. You could put in all of the best efforts and still shrink your freaking $200 sweater. So look, I'm not against natural fiber sweaters, but I will not own 10 of them. And I will go buy my acrylic polyester sweater from the thrift store, from a thredUP or something, because I just won't. This was a tough one to learn, but doing this is going to save me time and money and just more closely match my lifestyle and kind of how I operate, and just make me a happier person. Last winter, I swear to God, every weekend I was hand washing sweaters. It drove me up the wall. Moving on. The last one is a more recent acquisition to this list, and that is to inspect your tags. Inspect them for number one, washing instructions, or I guess number one in this case, washing instructions, as well as fabric composition, and then inspecting the garment more closely for its details. And this is a newer addition to me, something I started doing more this year. And I've learned more about fabrics over the past 2 years. I'm not an expert by far, but how I used to shop, even something like 2 years ago, would be to look at a garment, and most especially in store, look at a garment and I would say, wow, I like that. It looks cute. Sometimes I would touch the fabric, like to, help me make a choice. And then I would try it on, see if I liked it, go out of the store. I would rarely check fabric contents or washing instructions, or do kind of a more closer examination of the fabric and the construction. With paying attention to fabrics, you start to also learn about how things wear. And sometimes I might not have the name off the top of my head about oh, I know that this fabric is acrylic, but then when I feel it, it's oh yes, I know that this is say an acrylic viscose blend because I know what this feels like, and I know what fabric that feels like this wears like. And so I have found it helpful to check tags. Number one, to make sure that the thing I'm going to buy is washable in a way that's suitable to my lifestyle and all of that. And then also the fabric content tells you a lot about how it's going to be washed, but also can inform how you feel about a price. Because look, synthetics have a place for sure, but there are companies out there, including one of my favorites or previous favorites, Saison, who want to charge you $200 for 100% acrylic shirt. What are we doing? I'm personally not going to spend $200 on a freaking acrylic or polyester sweater. It's just not going to fly for me. So checking the label helps me, or has helped me learn. And you could even do this in your own closet, where you can look at materials and you could look at the tag and be like, okay, this is the blend. This is what it feels like. And then because it's in your own closet, you know how things wear. So now I have a pretty good feeling about what something like mohair looks like and feels like, but also how it washes. The sweater I'm wearing feels like wool. It is much softer than wool, which gives me the indication that it is mixed with something else, but it might not be. It's pretty stretchy. What is this? Oh, this is pure merino wool, machine washable. This was actually given to me as a gift. One Christmas. Somebody knew that I was into secondhand and she thrifted it, one of my favorite brands, and she gave it to me. It's cute. So, so I guess this is machine washable. So I'm not saying I'm an expert, and clearly my own, feeling of this, I was in the realm, but what I think is great is that there's lots of opportunity to learn from your own stuff. And so if you can gather data from the clothes that you already have, you can start to learn about how stuff washes, what it looks and feels like, and also how long things last. I was recently in a Winners and I saw this shirt, which I'm actually going to put the picture right up here. And this is a super trendy piece. And I have been interested in these kinds of tops. And I have 2 gift cards for Winners. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it on, see how I feel about it. And then when I tried it on, I realized that it was fairly thin. And then when I did my closer inspection of the garment, I noticed a few things. I noticed that the collar was, you'll see on the picture, they're not matched up correctly. And I know it's slightly askew on the hanger, but it's not a straight, the edges don't meet nicely at the button of the collar area. So that wasn't nice. And then the buttons are made out of plastic. One of them had a scratch in it, which I did not notice upon just first looking at it because I was excited about it. And then when I took time to feel the material, I was thinking about another garment that I have that feels very similar. And I assumed it was a polyester acrylic blend, and it actually was. And I was like, oh, you're getting better at your fabrics. Because this has like a really specific feel to it. And the fabrics that I've had in my own experience that have this particular like feel don't wash well when you wash them. So it's going to be hand wash only. And even then, like, let's pretend the button didn't have a scratch and the collar matched up. I didn't have high confidence that it would actually, appearance wise, look okay after hand washes. As you know, high maintenance must equal high love. I didn't absolutely 10 out of 10 love this. Yeah, it wasn't a 10 out of 10 love, so I wouldn't have bought it anyways. I also suspect with plastic buttons, you put that in the washing machine, they will scratch eventually. So going into inspect your garments is, I think, important, and one that I've been doing an increasing amount and just getting better at it. In a year or two time, I do hope to have even more knowledge and be able to think about my items even more critically. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about getting into the practice of something like this. And that's the entire reason why I started, was to learn more and to help myself think and shop more consciously. Because even if I'm only able to detect things, let's say 2 out of 10 times, that's 2 more times, or yeah, that's 2 times more than I was previously. It was 0 times before. And so over the past year and a half, I've gotten better at it. And I just think it's one of those things that even more knowledge and even more betterment will come in time. So these are my guidelines for shopping, my rules for shopping that overall I feel like have helped me be a much more conscious consumer in terms of thinking about money and budget, but also longevity with my clothes and liking my clothes more. I was going to say keeping them for longer, but that's longevity as well. I'd love to know what your rules are or guidelines that help you shop more consciously. These are, of course, not the only things that guide how I shop. These are just some of the things that allow me to think more critically or consciously on, like a snap of the finger or, at the top of my mind. So thanks so much for watching, hanging out with me today. I'd love it if you would subscribe to catch more content like this, and hope to see you again around here soon.